About 8 months ago, Mariah and I decided we were going to do our first ever music tour to Scotland. It's about time. This is the recap from that trip we did a few weeks ago. Set off from Evesham, which is our home base in England, and had our first night in Lancaster. Basically had a cup of tea and a look around and then left. Anyway, on the way up to Scotland, we decided to scooch into the Lake District because it is one of the most beautiful parts of the UK. Sheep! And this is the Kirkstone Pass, which is a lovely little drive, beautiful views. Often see RAF jets flying around here, down to Ullswater, and I decided I was going to go in for a little swim because basically I love getting wet in the wild. Sue me. Anyway, back on the road across the border, and we had our first night in Scotland in this lovely little village called Moffat, which has the skinniest street in the UK. Syme Street, there we go, Mariah's there. Back onto the road, up through Glasgow to Loch Lomond was really where it first started to become really Scotlandy, excuse the phrase. And the beautiful views, we had amazing weather for the whole trip. Had these little swans dancing around, giving us a little show, and we decided to do our first music sesh, which was on the banks of the Loch Lomond. Beautiful! Anyway, through the Highlands and up to Glencoe. This was one of my favourite places to stay at this Glencoe campsite, and decided to do a second session here overlooking another loch and some mountains. I mean, how good was the weather? I couldn't believe it. Anyway, our plan was to go up to Skye, so we went up to a place called Uig, which is where a friend of ours lives, and we had a beautiful time hanging out with some friends in this old crofting house. This is us. Again, the sun. This was where the weather slightly started to turn, but it was still beautiful this day, and Skye is just a magical place with the columnar basalt, and this guy turned up to play some bagpipes. I mean, how lucky were we? Anyway, back down to Portree, which is kind of like the capital of Skye, I guess you'd say. It's certainly the most touristy place. So went through some shops and played another session in the port, which you can see right here. It was me playing next to a boat. So, you know, we tried to play lots of sessions because actually we didn't have time to book that many gigs, but this was one of the gigs we did have time to book, which is the Isle of Whithorn, a lovely pub called the Steam Packet Inn, and we played as our duo project Cicada. There's us, look. Anyway, we had a little wander around the Isle of Whithorn, which is this beautiful little place which hardly anyone goes to. It's kind of like old Christian pilgrimage spot, and then played our gig. And then basically it was time to head home. It felt like a whistle-stop tour of Scotland, but we had this beautiful rainbow on the way home, and we will be back with more gigs and more sessions. Scotland was great. See you next year.